Hello, good evening to all present here, and fellow, and to also, and a very good evening to Sripad Krishna, who's joined here as the guest for today's session. So, Mr. Sripad Krishna, he has been working in the fields of artificial intelligence, and he's an entrepreneur himself. So, we welcome you here, sir. And I would now like to give the give the control to Mr. Aditya, who would do a brief introduction.
Welcome everyone to the second webinar of Census 20. So today we have Dr. Sripad to talk about artificial intelligence, entrepreneurship, how to start career in deep learning, etc. So make best use of this session, and do feel free to comment on your questions in the chat box. There will be a special time allocated for your Q&A at the last 10-15 minutes. So try to make best use of it. Over to Santosh and Vaibhav.
Yeah. Good evening, sir, and good evening to one of our presenters. Myself and my friend Vaibhav will be asking a few questions on your experience and about artificial intelligence and entrepreneurship. To start off with, what are some of the valuable things you kind of grasp during your undergraduate studies in order to go into the field of AI and entrepreneurship?
So first of all, thank you so much guys for having me here today. It's a pleasure coming back to NITT's event. So yes, on that note, to start off with, I think regarding valuable lessons, I'm not going to talk anything in terms of academics. I'm going to talk about everything other than academics, which is the most important, which is one of the most important things as well, which kind of we miss out. So I guess the first and foremost would be, is that hostel life makes everyone independent, right? So you end up taking a lot of decisions on your own. Something as silly as, you eat a heavy breakfast, you skip morning class, and you skip some exams and stuff. But the consequence of taking independent decisions is also the fact that you have to own up to the consequences of it, right? So you get attendance shortage, GPA falls down and everything. So the point is, over the course of 4 years at NITT, by making a lot of these silly mistakes or stupid mistakes, you become more and more better at taking sensible decisions for yourself. This is actually a very, very underappreciated and underrated, lesson, which we realize only when we, get out of college. The other important thing what I learned at NIT was how on being self-resilient in all phases of life, right? Your learning, your personal and career development, right? You start exploring things that are of your interest beyond your classroom at LHC or on, right? You start exploring clubs, you start exploring events, symposiums, and there's a lot of self-learning that happens, and you start to explore the other sides of yourself, which you had no choice of, to understand during your high school days. And this teaches you the value of interpersonal relationships, team building, and how to handle them. Right? So be it with your lab mates, your classmates, your project mates, teams, clubs. So you start becoming a good team player right from your sophomore years at NIT. And eventually you start trying to give the best for your club or for your team. And you progressively mature to become a great team leader who understands how to bring the best out of the team. This is something which we don't consciously realize at NIT, and how much of impact even the event what you're organizing right now, right? It might sound very simple, but it takes a lot of effort to coordinate, plan, and stuff. Right? You will understand this only when you get out of college. So together, putting all these things, it kind of prepares you for handling any high stress adversaries, unexpected events, chaos, and mayhem. Right? So think about it. Every semester at NIT, we pretty much had about 5 to 6 subjects, 1 to 2 labs, a dozen assignments, back-to-back CTs, and in between you had club projects, symposiums, fests. And so in this, if you sustain and survive this at the end of it, it prepares you for handling anything. In fact, even during my Ph.D, when I had about 16 to 18 hours of work per day, especially closer towards the date of conferences and important publications, there were times I thought, let me just give it up and go. I can't handle this. At those times, I used to go back and think so how did I manage all these at NIT? And so this motivated me to actually drag along my entire PhD and complete it. So I think, and the last point, what we take for granted what we learn at college is also the art of frugal innovation, right? So we learn how to operate at a very low resource stricken environment and try to maximize the potential of every limited resource that's available to you, right? It's essentially jugaad, right? You learn from doing your lab projects, organizing fests, club projects, everything at NIT, which somehow there is always restriction in terms of physical resource, monetary resource, human resource. There's always a constraint, and yet we come out of that. So these are the most valuable lessons what I learned at NIT, and what I guess everyone, if you ask any alumni, they'll pretty much agree on all these. And you start realizing this only when you come out of college, and you start to pretty much miss the chaos when you come out of college. Yeah.
Thank you so much for answering this way. Even I personally feel that like most of the learning takes place outside the classroom. Moving on, so there must be some point in your life where you felt you wanted to become an entrepreneur. So when was that point which you felt you had that entrepreneur spirit inside yourself? Was it before college, joining college, or during college, or is it was it developed later in your life?
So I guess it was a continuous process and not an instantaneous moment, I would say. So, okay, fundamentally, I believe that entrepreneurs are creators and doers, right? So in all fairness, I never imagined to start a company from day one, when I was in NIT or when I was building robots at RMI or anything, right? But what I realized during my undergrad days was I like to build stuff. I like to have my intellectual creative space. And having an idea and bringing that to life, right? Whether it's a technical idea, or I was a part of the Festember team as well, and we got a lot of new ideas at that point of time. Your Rolling Reels Film Festival or your FWIT teams. So bringing any of these ideas to reality and seeing that happen with the team. So I realized that always gave me a secret high, which I realized only a bit later, right? So having said this, during my third year and fourth year, everybody was there's a huge peer pressure to sit for internships, go for CPCs and stuff. Somehow I realized that if I get into an industry job, this would kill the hunger in me, the creative hunger in me. And so I never sat for internships. I never sat for CPC. In fact, I never stepped by side of TP. The only time I went was to collect my REM book. I'm not saying that everybody should do this, but this is just my experience, right? Sometimes I may think I'm stupid also, but yeah, this is what happened, and I can't change the past. So I realized that in this process, I can get the intellectual creativity only in a fast-paced research environment, and hence I decided to. And so for this to happen, I needed a formal training. So the lab experience, what we get at NIT, or the project experience at RMI was not sufficient. So I decided to become a scientist by training, and that's why I pretty much applied for PhD. So it was pretty much NIT set the base for that. And during my PhD, I realized that yes, I'm creating some pretty cool technology and validating a lab environment, and we're trying to publish a lot of papers, right? Now, how do you take this beyond to make this really impactful? So that's when I realized that, yeah, so to do this, to make this happen, I don't think I can stay in academia anymore because it's going to slow this down, and I need to start my own venture. And so that's how Origin Health was born.
It was really nice to hear that. Moving on to the next question, as you said, in the PhD, how was your experience when you studied in US? Compared to NIT, definitely it's like in Singapore. And what is it? How did you really experience the education system over here and in US?
So it's a good question, right? So again, this answer cannot be taken as a general for any PhD program. It depends from university to university, your discipline, so many aspects, right? So for me, the PhD program at NUS was very, very interesting and extremely fast-paced and quite fun, especially in the first few months. But eventually I realized that, it got really hectic, and I got myself so engrossed into my research because of its nicheness, right? It's so niche that after a while you don't have because everybody's working on a very niche stuff. That's why you do a PhD. So you realize that after a while you get into your own shell, and now this actually puts you into loneliness. And in fact, a lot of graduate students across the world, especially PhD students, have all at some point of time, suffered issues of anxiety or loneliness, and it just kind of affects your mental health eventually. So to be honest, even there was a point in my PhD where I had that. where, I did seek some professional help from, the NUS counselors, and they also told that, yeah, this is something which everyone goes to. So this was something which I never had at NIT because of the fact that I'm a people person. And I was a part of so many teams and clubs. So I always had people around me. Then suddenly removing people out of your life and then getting only into the intellectual high was kind of pretty much crazy. So this was the time I realized, okay, so I've got myself into this. Now there's no way getting out of it. So I need to manage. So it was during that time I decided to find out what is the best way to channelize my mental energy. And I realized that, yeah, the physical way would be the best way. And I started running. So I had a leg fracture during my final semester where my left leg broke into a couple of pieces, I think 6 or 7 pieces. So I could not run for more. I forgot how to run. I forgot how to walk. So I used this time during my PhD to actually start running again. I learned how to run again for 50 meters, 100 meters, and all the way till push it up to now I can, towards the end of my PhD, I was running anywhere between 8 to 10 kilometers in a stretch. So channelizing this level of mental pressure into physical energy kind of was very positive, and it created a white space for me to think about, and it actually helped me to finish my PhD faster. I was able to finish my PhD 6 months earlier itself because of having a white space to channelize. So again, a lot of people, my colleagues were artistic in nature, so they use music as a way to get out of this. They use art, painting to get out of this. So for me, I use this to get out of it. And at the end of it, it was also useful because it helped me lose 14 kilos of weight. So yeah, so that's the PhD experience. Yeah.
This is really impressive. Even I've been trying to lose weight over this COVID holidays. Yeah. So moving on to the next question. So before joining NUS, did you have any plans of what you're going to do in future, or was it did you just join for the sake of doing research or something like that? So what was the intention of doing a PhD before you joined?
So it all started based on my internship. So I got an internship at my 3rd year at NUS. So as I told you, I always wanted that intellectual freedom and creativity. So that's why I wanted to be in research. So I went as a research intern there. I pretty much liked the lab environment there. And my supervisor, like me, he said, why don't you do a PhD? And if this is what you like, then why don't you do a PhD? Because the other reason also why I decided to do a PhD and not a master's and then PhD is I hate writing exams. So I would rather sit in lab and do 1,000 failed experiments rather than sit and prepare for exams. So I was trying to find, and I did not like a traditional job, industry job. So the only option was PhD for me if I had to go to the next phase of life, right? So and I liked it. So that's one of the reasons why I actually chose that path.
Yes, that's good. And moving to the next question, after doing PhD, if I may ask, what was your goal at that time? You directly go then started up a startup, or how did you actually strategize during the time?
So to be honest, when I joined PhD, I didn't want to have a company of my own. I wanted to get into again, the place where I found this individualness was in academia as a professor, having my own lab and carrying out my own research. But during my PhD program, at the pace at which the research was evolving, I realized that academia is actually slowing down the actual translation and the commercial impact of these technologies. So I think during my 2nd year itself, I started to decide that, okay, I'm going to get out of academia and try to make a better use case of these technologies and not just restricting them to papers. So I've been exploring since my 2nd year, and my PhD focused on developing AI for medical imaging. So I was exploring quite a few options in that. 1 or 2 failed during my PhD itself, and finally this is how Origin Health was born after a few failed ideas.
All right, thank you for your response. What is the project that you're working on during your PhD, and what are the challenges that you faced there, and how did you overcome it? Can you share a small glimpse of that?
Sure. So my PhD focused on AI for medical imaging. Specifically, I focused on addressing the problem of a condition called glaucoma. It's a blinding disorder that is irreversible in nature, and it's one of the largest cause of blindness in the world. So the challenge we are trying to address is that today, it's a very high risk factor for Asians, especially Asians and Africans. And there is no cure for it. So the problem we are trying to address is that today, if you go for getting a glaucoma screening done, you need to sit through 5-6 different tests, and you will have to wait 6-7 months because it's a progressive disorder for them to tell. So by the time somebody finds out that you have glaucoma, you've already lost 30-40% of your vision, which can never come back again. The problem we are trying to solve was that, can we simplify this and make this really faster so that you can save somebody from losing their vision permanently? So pretty much what I developed was medical image segmentation, image enhancement techniques to assess the images of the eye, and how we can use that to extract structural information present in the eye, and eventually to predict glaucoma just from a single image, from a single test in under a minute, rather than keeping this for months together. So if you do this, you will be able to save like millions of people from becoming blind. So this was my Ph.D. Work on.
It's really interesting to hear what is it, biomedical field and an artificial intelligence has this kind of interrelation. Switching on to the next question, now since you talked about medical imaging and artificial intelligence, in what ways could these techniques can be implemented in the fields of the biomedical engineering and the public health regarding the current pandemic? Is there any solution?
So I think there's a lot of hype and buzz around AI, right? So I don't believe in the huge buzz of AI replacing humans everywhere, and AI replacing doctors and things like that. So I've been working with public health care systems in Singapore, NHS in the UK, and private healthcare players in India for the last 4 years. So as a human, we fundamentally are beings we seek warmth, we seek comfort from only other human beings. It's very difficult for us to communicate with AI forever. The point is that you can never replace clinicians or doctors fully with AI. But where AI can come here is to assist them to make their job better. And there's a severe shortage of well-trained people for any, literally for any healthcare condition today. There's always a shortage of people. So when you have people of low competency and low skill level, how do you use technology to bridge the gap in the quality of care that is delivered by a clinician probably in Tuakudi there versus somebody who's delivering it Apollo at Chennai? Right? So this is where technology can come in as assistive solutions. So this is how it's actually being used today for current pandemic as well. So a lot of AI companies, what they're doing is now people realize, the best example would be Philippines. So in Philippines, what happens is what happened is that people realized the impact of COVID a bit later, and they didn't have sufficient wet lab testing facilities to do the PCR tests and stuff. So people started doing MRI and CT scans. So they realized that, yeah, we have facility to do these imaging, but there is not many people to actually interpret them. So this is where AI came in. So there's a teleradiology company that came in and that helped the clinics in Philippines, which had imaging facility, but nobody to interpret and nobody to, take a look at the scans, and connected them with AI vendors across the world. And so they used this to pick up and screen COVID patients within first 2-3 days before the damage on lungs was very high. So the biggest impact moving forward in AI in healthcare would be in terms of screening, because a lot of countries now have realized the importance of testing, screening, not just for COVID, for any condition, be it diabetes, cancer. This is a huge cost and burden to the healthcare system globally. So you use, and to screen, it's a big challenge because you need to, screening is basically you need to assess every single person in the world, every single person in the country. And there's no way doctors can do this. So this is where AI can come in as an assistive tool to screen and to pick up cases initially. And then the doctors can, focus only on the high risk patients later. And it's about resource allocation there. So AI, it would be very good for screening and initial triaging to reduce the cost on the healthcare system.
Thanks a lot, sir. So to do research and to know more about AI and stuff, you need a lot of inspiration. So what are a few things that inspired you as a person Is there anyone you have as like role model, or is it like self-motivation?
So full disclosure, I never actually wanted to do AI in medical imaging. It was a chance. I came here by chance. So I wanted to do a PhD in biomedical robotics. So the prof took me in, my internship was, and then towards me joining the program, the scholarship dropped away. And there's another prof who had medical imaging and computer vision, traditional computer vision. So he said, this is the only option that was there. And that was the only option what I had also. So I just took it. The reason actually I came into AI was because beyond a point, traditional computer vision algorithms became too difficult to generalize and be really robust on a large use case. So I came into AI because it was needed there, not that I went there, it just happened there, right? So in terms of inspiration, there are a couple of movies which really inspired me in this research. One was Stephen Hawking's movie. I forgot the name of that. So it's a very interesting line that kind of drove me throughout my PhD was, while there is life, there is hope. And so that was one thing. And the other thing in terms of AI, one of my favorite movies till date, which inspired me, is Alan Turing's movie. I think it's called, it's about the Enigma machine, how Alan Turing, pretty much the father of first artificial intelligence, how he developed a machine to crack another machine, right? So in terms of movies, these are the things, but yeah, in terms of like actual tech space, it depends on field to field. So the industry leader pretty much I look up to till date is Google Healthcare and DeepMind.
That's really cool to hear, like related movies and stuff. Like moving on to the next question, like since like you told that you were a part of festival workshops and reforms team, and I am also a part of festival workshops and reforms team. I'm so glad about that. So like, how do you actually, not only in the college days, as well as like when you started a startup, like how did you actually build your team, and what did you actually look in the people like for most, like in order to get the success rate of that particular team? Yeah, I guess.
So I think one of the principles which I always believed in during college and when I was in Festember or RMI or even currents for EEE Department Symposium, and even now, right, is for me, the team is everything. The team is bigger than me. The team is beyond me. And I always put the people at first. So one of the important qualities I used to look for while picking up my team back then and even now is highly motivated and really curious individuals. But the problem with this group of people is that most of them, they tend to be fully autonomous, and they are not everybody is a very good team player. So I look for people who are highly motivated and intellectually curious, but at the same time, they commit to go out of their way to help others. So only then a team structure will be maintained. So, and only if you have this, people will push each other and eventually raising the bars and standards for each other, and the team as whole will grow up. So the important thing, what we see when we kind of pick our team is, are they a good team player right now? 2 years later, can they be a good team leader? So if we sense that, yeah, then that is the best team to work with.
That was a really good answer, sir. Since you have like started your like own company, can you share about the interview process that goes there? Can you share about, I mean, like your favorite question that you ask in an interview, the question that you like to put forward?
So we are actually hiring right now as we speak. So and we are hiring for positions in India and Singapore. So it depends from role to role, but the most common question which I put forth for people is why they want to work in a startup, and why they want to work in a healthcare startup that is highly regulated. The chance of failure is very, very high. So I think because to be honest, startup is not for everybody. Not about starting, but even for working, because it's a very, very agile and very, very fast-paced environment. Things are chaotic. Today there is something, tomorrow that whole thing is gone off and stuff. We want people who can really adapt and move really, really fast. And only few people actually like that high. A lot of people get tired by lack of organization, which you typically have in large company. So I look for people who are equally driven in that. And regarding the second point is, why you want to work in a healthcare company, because we're not an app development company, where we develop something, we launch the product tomorrow. We have clinical trials. we need to test on thousands of patients before it's rolled out. And it's a very sensitive area, what we're working on, pregnancy and mother's health and stuff. So there are so many risks, but why do you still want to be a part of that? So that's where we get a lot of people saying that I believe in the cause. So for people who believe in the cause, people who have a purpose for that. So we believe that these form a core part of our team, which will be there with us no matter what, whether we fail tomorrow or whether we succeed. This is the kind of team we want to travel with.
Thank you, sir. Like what piece of advice generally you give us, what is it, to set of college graduates like us who might be in the same mindset as you right now, like probably want to start up a company, want to become like an entrepreneur. What piece of advice do you give?
All right. So this goes back to my earlier point when I spoke about. So entrepreneurs are, in my opinion, are creators and doers, right? So this is not my advice per se, but it's more from my co-founder, which I love sharing that. So my co-founder Jens is a serial entrepreneur, having led companies across Southeast Asia and built teams from 0 to 300 members. So one of the interesting things what he used to say was, you first decide, if you want to be an entrepreneur, decide the world you want to live in and you want to create 10 years from now. And have that as your mission. So to do that, you need to believe in yourself. You need to believe in team. You need to make the team believe in the purpose. And that alone will drive you. It is not going to be easy. It is going to be terrible. Like in terms of there's going to be a lot of rejections. You'll have to grow a lot of thick skin. But despite all those challenges, if you have a mission and you believe and your team also believes in that, that will lift you up whenever you have your lowest moments. And zooming out, the bigger precursor for all that is to have a vision for the world you want to create in. The vision and mission for us, for the world we want to create in, is we want to democratize quality prenatal care for every expecting mother across this world. Today, 90% of the mothers do not have quality access to prenatal care. So with this mission, we'll do whatever it takes to achieve that. So visualize the world which you want to create 10 years from now.
I mean, very well said. I do firmly believe that the vision is one of the most important things that you need to have for succeeding in your life. We'll move on to the next question. Say you go back like 5 years back in your life. Like, what is something different that you have done that could like probably help you out in like today's time? Something different.
There are different phases of life. It was different things, but something which is general is what I've learned and what I probably share is listen more. So often we as creators in research or whatever space you're working in, we end up being engrossed in our own idea because it's our own baby, and we always think that it's the best, and maybe there's no problem at all. We assume that there's a problem and we start trying to solve a solution that doesn't even need to be existent in the first place, right? So a lot of times I felt if I had listened to the people for whom I'm working for, to people whose problem I'm trying to solve, my supervisors, or like right now my customers at my initial stage of my business, or my collaborators at initial stage of business, if I'd listened to their side more, then I could have resolved a lot of stuff. And again, at a philosophical level also, this is not just about your company or anything, right? In general, when we tend to listen more, we always understand the other person's perspective better, and even relationships strengthen because of that. So yeah, I'll go back and listen more.
Like since you told that like others' opinions also do matter, like regarding that, like since let's say you are in a college life and probably could have avoided certain kind of mistakes which you have done here and there, so that I would have reached particular position at a year faster rate than before. Like now, if like I'm at this position, say in 10 years, probably I would have been to the same position in say let's say 5 to 6 years. Some major downfalls which would have like you had like probably so that you could have avoided it.
So, okay, I think the biggest piece of advice for current students who are studying would be is your GPA is important as well. So this is the biggest myth what we have there in college, saying that, dude, I have 10 projects, so that is enough and stuff. I've been a part of the admissions process as well in NUS, trying to filter out applicants for my lab and stuff. So to be honest, I lost out on a lot of opportunities. I couldn't apply for DAD, I couldn't apply for my tax. So NUS happened because that was the only option that was left for me, where they somehow didn't bother about GPA like my initial prof, and he just saw a bunch of projects, and I just got lucky. So even when I applied for a lot of universities in US for direct PhD, my GPA was a big red flag there. So yeah, so that is a big misconception we have in college, and it's not just probably me, but if you talk to a lot of seniors who are out there for 3-4 years in the industry, they'll understand. Maybe if I could have studied a little bit better in this particular semester, then my overall GPA is better. I could have got better university and stuff. So for that, I think what you should do is not wait for the next semester. Start from this semester. You'll never get the next semester to improve. There'll always be something or the other coming up. So as much as you also want to work on projects and build your resume and stuff, also focus on your academics. And I know it's hard trying to juggle between these two itself, but the third important thing, what I felt could have been better in college is if I had taken part in more team building and more leadership activities as well. Like, handling interpersonal relationships is a very challenging thing. When you come out of college, you realize the outer world is not same like how it is. So maybe I could have done better there as well. Yeah. So those are my 2 cents.
Okay, like those were really good. Thanks for sharing a lot of useful, insightful stuff back in college. So you have started your startup based on biomedical stream. So there must be a lot of legal and as well as ethical issues that you face on a daily basis. Can you share a few points on that?
Okay, so now you're asking questions like my investors. So so there are a lot of actually regulations in what we are trying to work. One is, although we are not a diagnostic tool, so basically to give you a context, what Origin Health does is we are developing cloud-based solutions where anybody who's performing pregnancy scan today can simply drag and drop a video clip of the fetal anatomy. Let's say you're working on the fetal brain, and we take care of the rest. So you just upload it. We help them to identify the right image they need to be looking at, perform all the assessments they need to be performing. We take in the mother's demographic details and help clinicians to screen for up to 50 birth defects at the point of examination itself. Essentially, we replace any scanning room to that of a fetal medicine specialty center just through an internet connection and browser. So this is what we do. So the challenges for this is, the first one is obviously the medical regulatory, because we are going to give some measurements and assessments which the doctors would eventually be relying upon. So how do you ensure that this is really robust? So that's one of the big engineering challenges which we are trying to solve. The other important challenge what we're trying to solve is the maternal and fetal space is a very sentimental and emotional space, especially in Asia. So just one wrong diagnosis or just one wrong interpretation can ruin the lives of, forget your company, can ruin the lives of families. So how do you ensure that that's not happen? So we are bringing in explainable AI. So we are ensuring that at every stage, our AI is not black box, and you have data-driven, outcomes, so people know what they're looking at. The third biggest challenge for us is the status quo. So the problem what we are trying to solve is to make novice clinicians, who account for about 70 to 80% of the market today, to be able to perform these imaging and interpretations at the level of specialists. Now, they don't like this. They don't like the inertia is always there. Whenever there's a new technology that is coming to make humans slightly efficient, there's always that inertia, reluctance is always there. So that's the big thing we're trying to solve right now. The problem is very analogous to when Google Maps first came out. None of the taxi drivers or auto drivers wanted to use it. Like, I know this route better than them. But at the end of the day, maps are just making sure that it's more efficient. They take the more efficient way, and it ensures that things are more consistent and things like that. So we are facing the exact same problem right now.
So yeah, it's like that interesting and project to hear what are the challenges which you face. Moving on, since some of the students present in the webinar are from second years, so in order to, what is it, like both have a, deep learning, artificial intelligence, instrumentation, all those things. Like they might have what is a varied knowledge, like what to choose, where to choose, and all. Like, and especially now biomedical instrumentation as such is big growing field right now in the current trend. Like where to look projects and how to look projects so as to build in the knowledge for current certificates.
The question what you asked is really good, because you didn't ask where to learn, but you asked like where to look for projects to build knowledge. I think the only way you can get real knowledge is through doing and failing it. So, but again, you need a starting point for that. So the starting point obviously would be now all these online courses are pretty much democratized. You can sit here and take a Stanford course, right? So you need that as a starting point, definitely, but you should not stop with that alone. And biomedical instrumentation and control engineering is a huge area. It varies all the way from precision medicine or personalized healthcare, where you have gold nanoparticles injected into medicines, into pills, so that they have a targeted drug delivery. So it ranges from that till right now, let's say for COVID, how do you develop sensors that can boost the sensitivity of current PCR? And how do you reduce and even how do you improve the sensitivity and accuracy of point of care devices? You have point of care ECG, point of care ultrasound. Point of care is basically you bring the device to the person and not the person coming to the hospital. So these are areas where, as electronics engineers, there's a lot of scope. And coming to my space in medical imaging AI, that is always there is always so much to explore there. The problem is same with any imaging modality, MRI, CT, X-ray, ultrasound, is that the interpretation is a highly subjective task. So how do you develop technologies that can interpret these images at the level of specialists and be able to generalize them, and also be able to perform a complex computation tasks there. So there's a lot of scope, and it again boils down to what exactly you want to work on an individual. I think right now, for the folks in year 2, the best way is to start looking for some summer internships, because right now if you're having remote classes, if it's possible for you, start doing some part-time internships in IIScs or IITs, or even in NIT. Right now, a lot of profs are getting more into this line of AI for healthcare and even biomedical instrumentation. So the best way is to work with them, and you'll pick up. And again, because my last opinion will be biased because I'm from startup background. So the other place where you will really learn is startups at the pace at which they operate. So so only way you will learn is by doing a lot of projects.
Thanks a lot for sharing your views. I request the guests to put up their questions. Since we are moving towards the end of the meet session, before that, I'd like to ask you a question. How do you balance both the professional and your personal life?
So, yeah, that's something I'm struggling with, to be honest, for a very, very long time. I'm still learning. So I'm not balancing. The answer is I'm not balancing, and that's not correct. But yeah, the justification I give to myself is, now we're setting up things and forming our team, and eventually things will become better. And I can, go back to my family as well. But I want to make that happen. Yeah. So I'm not the best person to give advice on that. Yeah.
Totally understand. So now the session is open for Q&As, right? So anyone who has any questions to be asked, you can unmute yourself and ask, or put in the chat box. So yeah, one of Ashwin actually has a question. What was your future plan back in your BTech years? Have things fallen in place as you envisioned, or you have ended up doing something completely different?
The future plan, the plans during my BTech, I think pretty much evolved in second year itself. That towards the end of second year, and when I was coming to third year, we had to take a stand on whether you want to sit for TP internships or not. So that's when I realized that, yeah, research is what I'm going to do. PhD is what, PhD or master by research is what I wanted to do. So the big thing was fixed, but I never really thought that I'll be in medical imaging and stuff. So that was something that just, took its own course. But yeah, so looking back, I don't think I have any regrets in what I thought and where I am right now. Yeah.
Thank you for answering that. There's one more person. He's asking, how has COVID affected your start? Do you face any challenges due to COVID?
I don't think it would be unreal if I say that we are not affected. Every single person is affected because of COVID in some way or the other. Specifically, the bigger problem what we are having is I work in healthcare as well, right? So the bigger problem is that we have problems on multiple levels. So in terms of product development and trying to form collaborations, it's becoming almost impossible for us to go to hospitals right now and collect some data points to start working on because there are a lot of restrictions, and it's become impossible for us to travel. So I'm based in Singapore right now, and I've been stuck. I had to come to India quite a few times in the last 7-8 months, but simply stuck here because of COVID, and I'm not able to travel. Likewise, for all our clinicians, because we're working in healthcare space, every single clinician we work with. So ultrasound imaging remains the only imaging modality that requires a constant touch between the patient and the physician. So every single clinician we have worked with has fallen prey to COVID at some point of time. So we work with about like close 16 to 18 clinicians right now, every single one of them, including their families. So that takes a huge toll on us as well. Timelines get slowed down, and we're also concerned about them. And so that's in terms of product and collaboration. In terms of fundraising and investors, the bigger problem is they are like, okay, we have a pandemic to solve right now. The last thing I need is to develop a technology to help pregnant mothers. People are really that cold, and we have had that talk so many times. So the thing is that a lot of investors want to make quick buck, and they want to ride the tide. So for them, COVID is a thing, and a lot of people were not interested in the first place. So this also was useful for us because we finally got good investors who wanted to have a longer and a bigger vision rather than trying to ride the tide. So that's how COVID has been for us.
Yes, thank you for answering that. And there's one more question. Do anyone need to ask?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please. Yes.
Yeah. Hi, Sripad bro. I'm Bala here. So, yeah.
Hi, Bala.
Hi, bro. So, you were always my motivation when I was there during NIT. So, the thing is, I just attended to get more motivated now. And definitely it was a very fruitful discussion, which I heard right now. So, I have two questions for you. So, one question is so as of now, you're a CTO of a startup. So, what are the challenges you're facing as an entrepreneur? How different was it being a head of a club or a symposium head or something like that? How different was it, and what are the challenges you're facing as a CTO? That is my first question. And my second question is so you're working in a biomedical startup. So say it is an AI, you're following an AI solution. So there will be some, at any point of time, there will be some false positive, or you can't say at what point your model or will fail. It might, there might be some cases where it will be working while you're training or while you're testing, but it might fail in real case. So how are you compensating for that? So what is the solution? It's a problem everywhere in all the deep learning solution based companies. So how are you approaching towards that issue?
Okay, cool. Thanks, Bala. Bala has been one of the best RMI juniors I've worked with since his second year. And now he's in the US doing his master's in robotics. So to answer your first question on the challenges, I think it's very specific to the field what I am in. So a couple of challenges would be is to build a team that you can, because the scale of problem what we're trying to solve is massive. We are trying to develop technologies for the entire fetus, and not just a particular part of the fetus. So fetus is a mini human. So you have the heart, lung, brain, kidneys and so on. So for this, you need a reliable and a large size team. So how do you ensure quality in that? So trying to pick up the right team members was definitely one of the first challenges there. The other challenge is because we are running operations in 2 countries fully remote. We are working out of India, Singapore, and now we are actually expanding to Vietnam as well. So running operations in 3 countries with 3 different teams is another big challenge what we are facing as well. And because I am in a healthcare space, the bigger challenge is the regulatory side. So similar to the FDA in the US, we have what's called as a HSA in Singapore and CDSCO in India. So how do you develop technology that satisfies all the clinical trials, clinical requirements, and gets approved by these regulatory authorities? So that's where I have to constantly put on the hat of a chief scientific officer as well, taking care of the science and medical part as well. So this keeps me juggling between all these hats, keeps me really busy. For your other question on AI and false positives, so the approach the approach is actually pretty much changing in the industry right now is kind of different for healthcare perspective. So initially, when the pioneers in healthcare and AI were actually IBM Watson. So when they came out, the way they were trying to approach a healthcare problem was to identify if something was present or not. That's it. But then they realized later, like they were working for skin cancer, melanoma when they started off with. So during that time, they realized that they've developed technologies to identify the true positive, but never really bothered about the true negatives, the false positives and the false negatives. So over the years, having learned from their failures and even failures from Google's lessons in diabetic retinopathy for the eye, we realized that the way to develop a robust AI system is, so the way a human will look at a problem is you will see whether something is present or not. I mean, like, let's say you're a sonographer who's doing a scan today. You will just keep scanning, assuming everything is normal. And if you happen to pick up something, then you'll be like, oh, okay, something is wrong. And then you start to investigate it further. But this is not how an AI can work. So for AI, what you need to do is you need to go in the approach of ruling out stuff. So at Origin Health, what we do is we assume that every patient case we look at is a potential anomaly case, and we try to rule out the conditions. So this actually increases the chance of the true positive and reduces the chance of false positive. And we also develop algorithms for every assessment that not only look for true positive, but also equally rule out the true negative, false positive, and the false negative. So this is the new industry approach in healthcare. And the last one, which is coming up new, is explainable AI. People have started using tools like Lime and GradCams to understand what the AI model is actually looking at. Does it make clinical sense or not? So yeah, I think explainable AI and going in this approach of ruling out rather than ruling in is how AI is evolving right now.
That's great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir, for answering the question. Moving on, there's a question from Meenakshi. What are the projects you did in BTech and also how many?
I work primarily in, so I was a part of the Robotics and Machine Intelligence Club, and I work primarily on robotic arms. We built about 6 robotic arms. We built 1 snake robot. I think the video is still there on YouTube. Then we built 1 wheelchair with robotic arm for people, for completely disabled people, quadriplegic people with no limbs at all, and that's controlled by head movement. And so we were a part of this Texas Instruments analog device challenge, and we were one of the finalists back then. So these are the pretty much projects I worked on. And for my final year project with NUS and NITT Trichy, I did a joint final year project where I was working on, again, with a few folks from ICE as well, from my batch, Haresh and a few others. We are working on developing quadriplegic bots, which is basically 4-leg robots. And the way we are trying to do this is to mimic the actual locomotory motion and the joint motions that you actually find in cheetahs and cats. So it was more of a material science and engineering and control system project what we are trying to work on.
Thank you, sir, for answering that. We have a question from Babu. So, what are the culture? What are the cultural differences that you faced, back in India and in Singapore? The cultural differences.
So this is also a very perspective-based question, right? So I think uh, I think one of the important things what I learned here, in a very positive sense, is that uh, people respect everybody respects everybody here, and everybody's treated the exact same way. So you go to a food court, you have the cleaner standing in the same line as the dean, as a student as well, and so this is something in India which we have to strongly work upon as well, trying to respect everybody, not just from philosophical level, but even it boils down to even our college, right? So there's a lot of problem what we see in our Indian education system that is associated with the more you're there in a particular field for, like you're there for 10 years, you become natural pioneer of that. So the kind of ego kills. So that's what I meant. Like, so with ego, you stop to listen to people, and you are in your own echo chamber, and you know that's the biggest problem, right? And that kills innovation. So the way to go around this is in Singapore, like when I talk to my boss, my PhD supervisor, when I talk to the dean, they equally, even though they're there for 20, 30 years, my dean's experience is more than my age, but he still listens to me and tries to understand what I'm trying to talk about as though he's talking to his peer. To be honest, this will never happen in our academic system back there. So I think we need to cut the bureaucratic, the red tape and giving, you know, the too much sir thing there and try to treat everybody on an equal level and have open discussions and listen. This is something what I learned in Singapore.
Thank you so much for answering that. We have another question from Shashwat. Like looking back now, like do you think certain things you did in college were an indication of your passion for starting up? Are there hints we can pick up on in our college life that we can mean something about our future interest? As they say, it's easier to connect the dots like looking backwards. Like what's your insight on this?
That's actually one of my favorite saying from Steve Jobs as well, and I actually put that in my thesis as one of my most inspiring quotes. You can only join the dots looking backwards. So as I told you, looking backwards, the first high for me was getting into RBI and trying to build my own robots and participating in Sangam and all these events, which made me independent and showed me that I'm probably not a very book academic person, but rather more of a hands-on person. And then when you combine that with the experience I had from a non-tech side, like in Festember or organizing triple events and stuff. So these were the things which made me realize that, yeah, I'm a team person. I need team. I need my team. I need my group of people. So these were the subtle hints, if I think about it, that motivated me to probably, eventually come into this path.
So thank you for answering that. There's one more question from Babu. Like, what are the requirements needed to join NUS or PhD in your domain, and how hard or easy it is? And is it harder to do PhD in Singapore or in India?
It depends in India also where you're looking at. A lot of aspects there, right? So in terms of PhD, I think I would say I would say don't use me as a case study here, because I got lucky in terms of my application, because I was working there for a while in remote, and there was internal recommendation for my work and so things like that. But over the years, the requirements have changed because of visa restrictions and so many aspects as well. So typically, they expect you to have a good, besides a good GPA, by decent, I mean, 8.5, 8.5 plus above, but I never had that. So they would expect you to have that. Then the other thing is a pretty decent GRE TOEFL score. Of course, it's not given a very, very high importance, your GRE TOEFL there. So don't ask me a number whether 320 is enough or 310 is enough, because the definition of good varies because you're compared against the peers who are applying along with you, right? So whatever you feel is good, yeah. But I never had a good GRE score also. So then comes projects. So they really look into projects and stuff. So for folks who want to apply for NUS, I would encourage, try to reach out to the supervisor first. First, pick up what area you want to apply, you want to do a research in, right? Try to reach, and typically PhD students are quite friendly out there. Try to go to the lab website, try to pull out some contacts of PhD students working there, try to talk to them and just ask them for 15, 20 minutes chat to understand more about their work. So a lot of people have done this for me as well, and anybody loves to talk about their work. So you get to know basically what they're working on, what lab culture is, because the first and foremost thing, I guess, actually the most important thing to do a successful PhD is not how intelligent you are or how great your idea is. It all boils down on your supervisor ultimately. This is the biggest learning. So you need to basically ensure that you and the supervisor have a good culture fit as well in terms of expectations and everything. So the best way to gauge this is to talk to people in the lab. I have seen a lot of PhDs. To be honest, I've seen more than 50% of the PhDs drop out in year 2, year 3, simply because of strained relationship with the supervisor. So, so to gauge that, you need to do a lot of due diligence from your side as well, and try to have a chat with the supervisor. Just write them an email saying, hey, you want to know, get to know more about them, send your resume and a list of projects. Best way, something that worked for me is I had my own personal website. So I'd flashed the list of projects, what I've worked on, the YouTube videos for the same as well. So this was useful for a lot of supervisors to, call me, reply to my emails. So this was useful because this is still better than your traditional resume, because everybody gets the same resume. Everybody puts mini project in AI for medical image segmentation, but how does it differentiate you from the other person, right? So show your skills out there. So that is one thing. And once you decide all these aspects, then try to look at different scholarships. I think for academically really bright students, like who have GPA 9.5 or 9 plus typically, one of the opportunities what they can look for at NUS is called the NGS scholarship. So typically, although they say GPA is not a bar, but historically only people with really good GPAs have got that a PhD scholarship. So that is one thing what Indians can look for. The other, why I say Indians is there are some which are not open for Indians. Then there are other scholarships such as the President Graduate Fellow Scholarship. In fact, 2 of people from my batch, they were actually NITT Trichy's gold medalists, twins called Guru Pranesh and Guru Raghav. So they were a part of this President Graduate Fellowship Scholarship as well in NUS. So that's another scholarship you can look for. And the last scholarship which you have for PhD is your standard graduate research scholarship that's offered by MOE, Ministry of Education, Singapore. So this is your standard PhD scholarship. So make sure you get all these, and then you pretty much try to apply. And again, this whole process will take a few months for you to figure out everything. So if you're in your final year right now, I would suggest start doing it. And don't just look for NUS, but also look for NTU as well, because they have the exact same, because both are funded by government, everything is pretty much same. And the last thing which you can also look for is SUTD in Singapore, Singapore University of Design and Technology. So it's an alliance between MIT and Singapore government, which is set up here, and they are a rapidly developing engineering institute. So they also have a lot of PhD programs. So these are things you can explore for in Singapore.
Thank you for answering that. We have a question from Aditya Ravichandran. If people want to build a startup in future, how can doing a prior PhD experience be different than doing an MS?
So you're asking, sorry, can you just reiterate that?
Yeah, I'll just repeat that. If people want to start, they want to build a startup in future, how can the prior PhD experience be different from an MS experience?
Yeah, okay. So PhD is not a requisite to start a startup. Okay, so I happen to do that, so I just went in that direction. I think the most important thing would be is whether you're working, whether you're doing an MS or even you're just out of BTech or PhD. The important thing would be is to find the hair on fire problem which you want to solve. So find out the hair on fire problem, what you want to solve, why people have not solved it. Is this a big enough problem? Does the market actually want this? To be honest, you don't need a PhD or a master's to actually do this. Even if you are doing a BTech just out of college, you can still do this. But my field happened to be something that is fully driven on research. So that is why it was kind of beneficial for me. But just a post-graduation. So the point is post-graduation degree should not be a stopper for anybody to explore ideas.
Hi, can I ask a question now?
Hi,
Hi, sir. It's been great for this talk. So I wanted to ask a question based on your current answer. Like you said, find a problem which is you think is most critical to solve. And you said that you worked more on glaucoma research and that during your PhD, and your Origin Health startup is now more for fetal solutions. So why didn't you lead your startup in the direction of glaucoma research, since you had worked on it for more compared to your fetal solutions? Was your fetal solution tech more better than your glaucoma tech? What was the reason? Like, can you split it up how you answered your previous question and explain between these two why you chose to develop a fetal solution?
That is a good curveball. So for me, at the core of it, I'm an engineer who's trying to look for some technology to solve a problem. So glaucoma was one of the problems I happened to stumble upon through my PhD. So the core reason why I chose fetal medicine rather ultrasound imaging was again because of my PhD background. So my PhD work pretty much focused on developing medical image segmentation, image enhancement, and diagnostic tools for imaging modalities that are based on light and sound. So my PhD work focused on OCT, which was light-based, and this is sound-based. So the reason why this is important is that the way images are formed because of speckle patterns and the physics of it is fundamental. So I knew the space quite well, and even back in my PhD, we were able to translate image enhancement solutions from ultrasound to OCT and vice versa. So I was confident in ultrasound. That's the first point. The second point as to why I did not choose to continue in ophthalmology is that I've been in the space for 4 years, and I realized that this was one of the first spaces where AI actually came in back in 2015. So it became pretty much super saturated. There are over 30 companies working on the same diabetic retinopathy and competing with Google. There are about 15 companies working on the same glaucoma and trying to compete with DeepMind as well today. And that includes one of startups from my lab, which is based on my work. It's called Abyss Processing. So everybody's doing pretty much the same thing. The field is super saturated. So I wanted to go out into another medical imaging domain. I was not sure of going into any other space other than medical imaging. Then I wanted to go only in medical imaging, and then I realized, okay, so in medical imaging, there's MRI, CT, X-ray. What do I go into? My strength lies in light and sound-based imaging modalities. Ultrasound. Cool. Now we picked up ultrasound. In ultrasound, what is the biggest hair on fire problem we can solve? So that boils down to what is the largest use case for ultrasound. So obstetrics ultrasonography is the largest use case of ultrasound imaging. Cool. In obstetrics ultrasonography, it's a huge area. You have first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, post-pregnancy, and preconception. There's so many things you can work on. What is the single biggest problem for clinicians today? For them is to actually interpret the growth and development of the fetus, which is the core and the most important thing in the pregnancy process itself. So in this, which is the most impact? Okay, so you can solve this either in the first trimester, second trimester, or third trimester. But in which segment, if you are going to solve, you're going to have the largest immediate impact. And that boiled down to second trimester, which is what we're working in, between 18 to 24 weeks of pregnancy. So that's pretty much the story as to why I'm working on a very, very niche thing today compared to glaucoma. Yeah.
Cool, sir. I have another question based on your answer for this. You said competition in ophthalmology was pretty tight. So I think everyone who's trying to start up would be having this dilemma. Like, they would be seeing other startups which are having similar value and solving similar problems. So how do we pivot or differentiate ourselves from the crowd? Or should we choose our battles wisely and drop that idea or modify that idea so that we can differentiate ourselves? How did you approach, like, even now you should be having some startups which are competing within the ultrasound space itself. So how do you differentiate and create value differently?
So actually competition is great, right? So if you don't have a competition, there are only two things. Either you're a visionary and you thought of something that nobody has ever thought of, maybe you're the next Steve Jobs, or second is either you're doing something which nobody wants. So the point is, having competition is great because it shows that the market needs it and people are actually trying to solve it. Means that this problem is real, right? So how do you differentiate in terms of your competitors? Again, you can differentiate in so many aspects. So even right now we have a competition as well. We have a very close competition. It's a UK based company. In fact, they're a public listed company as well, who are more established than us. So the way we are trying to approach, so you can approach your competition. So first, having competition is great. That shows that the market needs it. So that's the first step of validation. Now, once we decide that we want to do this, how do you differentiate yourselves from the competitor? So you can differentiate in terms of your technology, in terms of the way you deliver the solution, in terms of your business model. So for us, we are differentiating ourselves from our direct competitor in terms of not in terms of the technology, because we don't know what technology they are using at the crux of it. So it all remains trade secret, right? But they are also AI-based company as well, right? So we wouldn't wish to comment on that. And we wouldn't also wish to comment on the way we deliver, because they're also pretty much trying to go for a cloud-based solution right now. But the way we strongly differentiate ourselves is our business model and go-to strategy. So our competitor is actually going in the route of integration of these technologies with OEMs such as GE, Philips, one by one. So we, and they are a UK-based company, so they don't actually know the Southeast Asian market well. So in India, if you go to any diagnostic center today, they typically have multiple brands of ultrasound. They have one GE, one Philips, and one Siemens. So none of these diagnostic centers will purchase 3 new machines just for this purpose. So what they rather need is one solution that works for all of them. So how we differentiated ourselves is by having, by making this a device agnostic solution. So it's one that fits for all. Second way we differentiated ourselves is in terms of our business model. So India and Southeast Asia in general is a very, very economically tight space to operate, especially in healthcare, where the margins are very, very low. So if you go today and tell that your pregnancy scan costs 2,000 and you pay another 2,000 for Origin Health and we'll deliver this, people will not want. They'll be like, I'm happy not knowing what's wrong with the baby. That's how people work. So our ultimate aim is to democratize quality care for every single mother across the world. So how do you do this? So you need to make this very, very affordable for all. So we have structured our business model like a pay-per-use, which people are very, very comfortable with in Southeast Asia. So, and this is only a fraction of 5 to 10% of what they're actually charging in pregnancy scan centers today. So this was a strong differentiator as opposed to our competitor who was charging lakhs for a one-time single license, which centers don't even know when they're going to recover back. Yeah.
Cool, sir. Thanks for the answers.
Yeah. Hi, sir. Am I audible?
Hi, Vikash.
Hi, sir. So I'm Vikash, and I've been following your LinkedIn post for a while, and I've been really impressed with the work and company's progress. So, how can we as individuals be a part of your working team at the startup? We as BTech students or BTech passouts can be a part of your company. Can you just elaborate it, please?
Cool. So to give you a context, okay, so I'm just putting my link here on the chat. So you can apply for positions via this link here. So we are currently hiring for research engineers, research interns at our offices in India, which is based out of Bangalore. We'll be hiring continuously actually for the next 15 months. That's our pretty much hiring plan. So just keep looking out for our posts on our website, and the requirements keep changing on rolling basis. So right now we are looking for research engineers, front-end developers, and research interns who will be potentially joining in for winter internship basically. And a lot of folks from NIT and other institutes have also applied for research internships. And if anybody who has applied is in this call, just give us some more time before we get back to you, because we are trying to finalize our full-time team right now. And we will get back to people who applied for winter internship in a bit of time. So yeah, just keep following us, and we are going to keep hiring. There's another phase we'll be hiring in January, and again next April, and the October later as well. So we are hiring for every 3 to 4 months in tranches.
Thanks a lot for answering that, sir. I think we come to the end of such an amazing session. I personally had a lot of takeaways from like hearing your thoughts and opinions about various stuff. Thanks a lot for each and one who has attended the meet, and I guess yes, that concludes it. Thank you for giving us your thoughts. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Census, for giving us this opportunity. Yeah, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, sir.
Good luck, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.